There it does go. And I don't know. I'm really looking forward to this. Chris, you are because you're Zerg play and you really like ZVZ. But these guys are also heavy. I mean, DRG trying to come back. He was a really really good player, top tier all the time, and then he had a little bit of a weak spell recently, but he's coming back. And now Star Curious, being very famous because of that innovation, beating innovation very recently. But now we are into the game. It's on Yansu, and in the upper right-hand corner, we do have our red Zerg player. It's going to be MVP Dong Regu. And in the bottom left, our blue Zerg player, it is StarTales Curious.
So at this point of the game, both players are up to 9 drones, which means they could either make an overlord or not. We're gonna have to see at 100 minerals. So looks like both players actually did make the overlord, which means an early pull isn't gonna be coming. Even though it's Youngsu, they probably expect it though. So, or sorry, they would expect the opponent maybe. So it wouldn't be surprising to see their player go for a pull first, just because of that.
Alright, so it's kind of like, a mind game. Like, they both chose very aggressive maps, and yet both are expecting each other. I'm not sure who chose which, obviously, but so they're both probably going to play actually safe. So we're going to get up to 15 supply pretty soon. Obviously, like I said, no early pulls, no early aggression. These guys aren't in a hurry to get, the game onto their side. We do see players like Life, of course, he goes for early pulls quite often. Not only just win the game outright, but also to put the game into his favor, into his, tempo. We do see that Curious will be going for the 15 hash, actually.
Yeah, and on the other hand, Daringu's already had his pull laid down at 15 supply, which means he's going to be safer versus a Nightfall from Curious, but he's not going to be as good of a spot as if he would have went for hatch first, just like Curious. But it's not too much of a big deal. It's sort of plus safe to be a normal game most likely.
Yeah, so, I mean, these builds are very, very close, right? Obviously, one person gets the better, because it's a little greedier. But as far as, getting into the mid-game, it's not going to be a really big deal.
Yeah.
Of course, there's macro, and that looks like DRG will be getting that gas before his opponent.
I think Curious is just going to open for a gasless style, which involves roaches instead of getting Zergling Speed or Healing Nest, which is something Curious really likes to do. And Daringu is going for the most standard opener, which is the pull and then the hatch and a 3-minute gas.
Okay. Of course, that IEM New York in this tournament itself, we've been seeing a lot of Zergs favor that non-gas opener. In fact, Hyun, taking out TLO recently, that's all he did. And, TLO actually, as well as Life, he also played Life, they had at least one game where they said, I know what you're doing, you're not going to go gas, and I'm going to try and punish that in some way.
So both players actually made a pair of Zerglings to scout the other. If Daringu can get a scout into the main, he's going to know there's no gas. And when I see Daringu see this, he usually goes for a mass Speedling attack. Although in this case, his Zerglings are not going to see anything at all. They're going to get shooed away by Curious's Zerglings. We're actually going into Daringu's base to scout, since in this map you can't really just dip into the main to check the gas timings.
Okay, so a much harder map to get those exact gas timings, or even see the gas at all, unfortunately. But
Yeah,
Curious.
what's interesting here is Daringu actually pulled 2 guys off gas, which means he's not going to get the early Baning Nest, which also is what I've seen yesterday. He likes to go for a mass Speedling attack. And actually Curious made a Spine Crawler really, really early. It's finishing just in the early 5 minutes, which means he started it well beforehand, just in case of a mass Speedling attack, which means Curious is aware Daringu might be going for these early game attacks. So getting a Spine because he couldn't scout anything in the start is really safe.
Alright, so just playing safe. And Dongrigu, he is joining up, even still, going up to a lot right now.
Yeah.
It's currently 31 to 34 in the harvest count in Dongrigu's favor, actually just skyrocketed just a little bit more as well.
And since the bad thing about Curious's opener with going hatch first is that Daringu could see it and dip into the main, as opposed to playing versus a player who went pull first. And because of that, Daringu was able to drone non-stop. In fact, if we look at the drones tab, he's actually ahead by 5 drones. And also, all the offensive units he made were just a pair of Zerglings. So, since he was able to scout the main, he's able to skip making any Zerglings and go directly for a really, really fast third base as well. Which means if Curious does an all-in DRG and try to play a 2-base style with 2 evolution chambers and roaches in there, he's gonna get really behind. Especially with the fact that Daringu made a ton of lanes right now. Curious is gonna have to stay on the defensive while Daringu has his third going up, which means he's in a really good spot this game, I feel.
I would say so. It's kind of that, the whole phrase, when you attack, also expand behind it, and that's really what Tongargu is doing. So Curious, unfortunately, is not going to have an opportunity to scout. There is an Overlord, I believe, near Darngagu's third, but it is not going towards it. In fact, it's going away from it. And that's going to be unfortunate because, maybe you can't do anything about it now, but you always want to have the best intel on your opponent.
Yeah, but at this point of the game, because the lair is so late for Curious, he's not going to get roach speed. In fact, his upgrades haven't even started, just +1 ranged right now. He seems really worried because of Daringu's aggressiveness that he knows.
Ooh, that's a nice surround. I mean, that's not supposed to happen, is it?
This is really, really sloppy. I would say Curious is going to put himself even more behind now because he lost 3 queens, one of which was supposed to inject. And Curious is going to try to do something crazy by making a ton of lanes right now to try to put pressure or kill the third at least, because Daringu is most likely not going to expect a mass speedling attack based on what he's seen already, and Daringu's droned really, really hard. He's up to almost 60 drones and just now starting to make his units, which means if he can defend this without taking too much damage, he's going to most likely win the game.
Well, he is definitely caught off guard here. He just pull the drones, and the Lings have to take care of a few roaches. The roaches are out from Daringu. Unfortunately, if they do get surrounded, as we saw, they're still not that effective, so we really can't do too much. And the third, I think, is going to go down here.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Curious tried to sneak out a third of his own, but Daringu got a lane in there, so he was able to cancel it.
Well, so it kind of brings them back down to, at least even base. Of course, Daringu is still up by about 20 supply.
Oh, Daringu's lair is actually extremely late with the lair just being started. If he was able to play versus a normal style of 2-base roach instead of that mass speedling attack, he would have won the game because Curious didn't have a third, and Daringu droned up to 60 drones, which is just the point where he's starting to make units. But at this point, I would still say the games can go either way.
Well, that means that we're going to see probably, into the mid-game, see that tech. We haven't really been seeing that many roaches. They're just now starting to really get those out. A Ling fight, which should go into Curious's favor, and Daringu has to back up. In fact, Daringu now getting a bailing list. Usually see a bailing list much earlier, but it was put down around 10 minutes.
It's really funny to see mass Zergling attacks versus each other just because Bailing Nest is easily accessible in the early game. So you don't really see a ton of Zerglings clashing against another horde of Zerglings just because of how good Bailings are versus lanes. In fact, both players are almost near 50 Zerglings each. That's kind of really odd to see without any Bailings on the field.
Well, Curious, I don't believe, has a bailing nest of his own. That was really Daringu recognizing that, hey, I have a lot of Lings, you have a lot of Lings. Maybe I can get a one up by going ahead and getting a lucky bailing hits, although he has not morphed any quite yet. Both players are still getting back up their thirds. What are the upgrades looking at? It's currently 1-1 for Curious, I believe. So he did have those double evos much earlier.
He has the armor or upgrade advantage for sure. And he's also managed to catch up in drones. In fact, he's leading by a few, or sorry, not a few, by 8, which is a really good amount if he's able to mine his third without any interruptions.
So it's really kind of swung back into Curious's favor. I mean, he was behind right there because that third got down and because Daringu could drone up so much. But now it's back, it's still very even. It's
because
not like anyone's really in favor.
Mass speedling attack that he did, which was a crazy move that worked out just because of what DRG anticipated. He wasn't expecting any pressure like that at all, or he would have made some units.
Yeah, definitely. So we do see that Curious is going to be the first one to get that infestation pit. Of course, Daringu going to be behind on upgrades pretty much for the next few minutes. If a roach attack actually comes through, or rather, if Daringu wants to pressure before Curious, got infestors out, Curious would probably still be able to hold it, simply because, of course, he'd have the defender's advantage, he'd be able to get a nice arc, and he would have those upgrades.
Yeah, and an interesting dynamic with this mass Zergling versus mass Zergling thing is both players are always running their Lings around the map, trying to look for openings where they could do a ton of damage. And interestingly enough, it's kept both players at home for pretty much the whole game.
It's almost really, it's something you see a lot when people go for Mutalisk, right? Is those Ling wars, or the Ling wars of Mutalisk. And now we're seeing it while people are also getting roaches. So usually you just see Roach Hydra. You don't usually see Roach and a lot of Lings as well.
And here Curious is actually ran around the fourth and headed into the natural to do some attack on the drones.
Could do a little bit of damage here. How many? Did any drones go down there?
Just one.
Just one.
But he's gotten rid of all his lanes, and at the same time, he's trying to just get maxed on roaches, but also with adding a few infestors, thanks to that infestation bit, which just finished the research, which bought him the time actually, in case DRG went for an attack.
He also contaminated one of Dongagu's, in fact, no, actually just one of his Evo chambers. So even putting him farther behind when it comes to the upgrades. In fact, Curious's upgrade just finished a little while ago, so not only does he have better upgrades, but now he has better tech in the form of those infestors.
Yeah, and at the same time, DRG is going for Hydras instead of infestors, which is gonna make the army compositions different because we have Roach Infestor versus Roach Hydra.
Well, when the Roach Hydra can get a good arc, it can power through, right? Even with, unfortunately not having the best upgrades. But Yansu, it's not really a map where you can get that super big area, especially if you're the one defending.
Here something might happen. Maybe, no. DRG backs off.
Well, like I was saying, if you're defending and if you know where your opponent is and you get those good positions with, like up a ramp with those infestors, then there's no way the Donga's going to push up there. I mean, his entire army would be fungled.
Yeah, DRG is actually spreading his units right now. Just in case something happens, he wants to get the best arc he possibly can get.
Oh,
nice fungal here. It trapped about 16 roaches actually.
Yeah, that was nice. I think that's the Daryu's cue not to go and attack in here. ZVZ.
Oh,
he is.
No.
Okay.
DRG at the same time sent 5 roaches into the main. And also Curious sent 3 roaches to DRG's third, so there's a lot going on right now with counterattacks. Both players are just trying to split their units as best as possible and also maintain the fight.
Which is happening right now.
This is not good for DRG.
No, I agree. It's kind of in a choke. It's not the best arc whatsoever.
His Hydras were in the front too. They just died. Hydras are so bad. They have to be in the back to do anything.
And he hit before his +2 Carapace was done, so that was probably the worst timing that he could have hit. It's just not going to finish. He's trying to retreat. He saved about, I don't know, a fourth of his army or something like that.
The counterattacks got cleaned up for both sides, though Curious's counter is really strong right now. He's pushing into DRG's third.
And his infestor still has some fungal energy. It's not like he used all of it. He still has about 3 left.
Fungals are really good so far that we've seen.
Yeah, of course, Curious's army is not looking too big. I think he might have to back up here. A couple of Hydras from the back.
Weren't doing anything, just shooting Overlord.
Yeah, but he's still reinforcing. Like, a lot of blue is coming down. He's out of fungals, however. Dongagu's army is very low in health. It might just be enough to push him back.
Yeah, Curious made a really big mistake there with his Hydras lagging in the back. That means all the roaches in the front just attacked versus Roach Hydra, and they just died.
Yeah, definitely not something you want to do. I mean, if you have a good army composition, you have to have those roaches in front.
I actually think that DRG is in a really good spot, not because his counterattack did so much damage in the main. He killed off a lot of drones, and he's ahead by 10 drones right now.
Well, one thing we missed is that Curious was able to get up a fourth behind all that.
Yeah, but I don't think he's going to be able to mine from it, especially because he can't even mine from 3 bases right now. The only thing he can do is play defensively and get his infestor energy back.
Where are all his infestors, by the way? They burrowed and they got out of there. But he could, he has that burrow, right? He's been using it to harass with those roaches, but now he can also use them with those infestors if he wanted to. But like you said, the fourth, not terribly too useful because that drone count was hit by Dongagu's counterattack.
But Curious now is trying to replenish his drone count just so he can play the longer game. He feels he's safe enough to defend from any attacks right now based on what he has.
What do you think about this hive? It's about to finish for Dongagu.
DRG ideally would want to have a 4th base, which is actually halfway. Mining from a 4th base so he can afford the 3-3 upgrades as well as making an army. But I feel he's definitely going to have the upgrade advantage if he plays defensively to mine from the 4th and get his 3-3, while Curious has not a hive started.
Do you think he's just going to stick with getting 3-3 and those upgrades are actually going to, Viper is out? Just one. Just
one. That's very interesting. Maybe he's going to go for the fungal with Blinding Cloud, which is pretty effective. If you can pull it off. 2 Vipers, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times you see 3 as like the magic number of Viper counts.
Curious actually is moving out with his army. Wants to see what he can get done.
Well, going up a ramp, Dongagu does not have any fungals. So the thing about Curious is that he can poke up there and then retreat. He's not going to get trapped.
Most of the time it's whether you're poking up when you're taking a tower or trying to do a run by, which is what Curious is doing. This way you divert your opponent's attention. Also, so if they split too many units to deal with their run by, you can get in a better position and kill their 4th, for example. Or if they don't ignore it because they're focusing on your army, then your run by can do damage. So just moves like this make your opponent multitask and pay attention to what's going on.
We actually saw Hyun come back in quite a few games in his own series with these type attacks. I mean, they're very small. You know, they're 2 to 4 roaches each time, but they can do a lot.
Of course, if you don't pay attention, then your whole drone line can be gone really quickly.
Well, Curious is finally getting his own hive, although it is much, much later. He's also getting a spire, so I think it's going to be for Broodlords.
I think so, yeah. But DRG now started with his 3-3 after getting the Vipers out. I think if we look at the units tab, Curious has half the amount of roaches that DRG has. But what he does have are infestors and hydras. He's got the hydra lead by a few. He's trying to deny some mining at the 4th. I hate how you can shoot from the low ground. It's really annoying.
It's a little clever right there. He's also up by about 13 drones, so his economy's pretty good.
The big fight is about to go down right now. It's Curious, Bungles, a fair amount of...
Oh, it's kind of a weird engagement for Curious, unfortunately. That was definitely Dongagu choosing the engagement for Curious. I don't think Curious wanted that whatsoever. Loses about 2 infestors. The rest should be able to get back if they burrow.
Yeah, it's really nice to see a Roach Hydra infestor versus Roach Hydra Viper, because the infestors block your opponent's units in place, while the Vipers make them not attack and run at you.
Well, that's it for Curious's army, or at least this army. Of course, he has those 4 bases, and he's he has a nice drone count. But you know,
Curious, despite the earlier damage he took from the run by, he was able to drone up pretty well.
Can you explain this one swarm host?
One swarm host? Where?
On the production tab.
I'm not sure actually.
That might have been a misclick, and if it wasn't, or even if it was, he might just use it and set it over at the 4th or something. And
one swarm host won't help you in any situation, especially without the upgrade, so it has to be a mistake.
Yeah.
Curious actually hit 3 infestors just a bit below DRG's main. He's going to use this to try to do damage to the 4th. Because it's already so low, which means if DRG's out of position, he's going to be able to, he's going to get the hatchery. Curious, that is.
Oh, that's a very nice little tactic right there. I'll have to pay attention to that as the game goes on. Now, 3-3 is more than 3/4 of the way done, and once that is done, I feel like Dongayu will know I have the advantage in that. Of course, I'm not sure how good their scouting has been, but once he clicks on his opponent, he can say, hey, you're still at 2-2, he might start to be aggressive.
But at the same time, Curious is getting his Greater Spire almost completed, as well as started 8 Corruptors.
I'm surprised that he had enough time to do this. Like I said, I don't think scouting has been a priority for these guys. I'm not sure that Dongayu has seen it at all.
Have just been posturing back and forth, trading units here and there, nothing too game ending. But here, Curious has the high ground, and he's managed to fungal all those Hydras. If he can get them, that'd be a really nice pickoff.
Unfortunately, not able to quite chain fungal there, not really killing them off. They're doing a lot of damage, but you really have to follow up with that and not let them regenerate.
Yeah. Here, DRG's trying to get a good position by running off to the side and engaging.
Well, those Terrans that you were talking about are going to go ahead and kill Dongagu's 4th, but this attack is looking pretty scary. The Corruptors are out, and he's building the Broodlords right now. I don't know where they are, but there are 3 on the way, and if he can kill the Hydras first, then he can definitely clean up the army, but how much damage is he going to take in the meantime?
Yeah, this is definitely not the most relaxing situation to be in. Because if either player loses their whole army, it's going to be really hard to replenish. Here, DRG actually is getting not the best trades. If he loses this army, he has no resources in the bank. His 4th actually died to the infested Terrans, I think.
Yeah, they did.
So I think DRG's gonna have to pray and hope a miracle happens at this point of the game.
He has another 4th that he built. I think that was going to be a 5th, not that he saw the Terrans. But the Broodlords have come, as well as those which is on the low ground, are too overpowering.
Yeah, Curious played really well. Curious actually just wins, okay? That's cool.
A little abrupt, but that was a really back and forth ZVZ. Definitely nice. At one point or another, we said, this guy's in a better position, this guy's in a better position. But in the end, Dongayu does lose out to Curious. Some really nicely timed Broodlords as well.
The army was mostly the same in terms of value and the strength throughout the game. It's just Curious, after taking damage from the first run by, was able to replenish his drones and take a 4th without any punishment, and then just have DRG commit and attack into him, while at the same time killed DRG's drones and his 4th, which makes DRG pretty all in with his attack, and with Defender's advantage he was able to clean it up and just won the game, despite the fact DRG at 3-3 didn't really matter.
Oh yeah, darn, I forgot that he had 3-3, but you're right, he even cleaned it up with just the ground before the Blue Lords even came in. But that was game number 1, guys. We'll be going into game number 2 very shortly.